All right, everybody, welcome to the Cheap Seats Podcast, episode 24, presented by the Cheap Seats Media Network. I'm Dominic. We're back with two podcast episodes in the same week. Dylan, we just recorded a NFC and AFC championship preview for the NFL with a couple of my buddies, my brother and his friend. But now we have to have on my friend Dylan Friedman, who I have just met this past couple months here in Chicago at Medill. He's a wonderful person. I feel so lucky to have met him. He's great. I'm happy to have him on, and we're going to talk a little tennis. Dylan, welcome to the program.
Happy to be on, and appreciate the opportunity.
Oh man, we're excited. I'm jacked up for this. I'm ready to talk some tennis. I love tennis. I was telling you, and you know me now a little bit. We've done a tennis episode on this podcast before with my good friend Hannia. Shout out to Hannia. She's awesome. She's a huge tennis fan. Dylan, you are a huge tennis fan. I'm more of a casual observer, although I do love watching the tournaments. I think it's a really exciting time in tennis, just with the personalities we have, with the great players in the game right now. So it's just something that I'm super excited about, and part of the reason why I've started to put this podcast onto YouTube, so it has a video component, Dylan's, because I knew that you'd be coming on soon, and I want to make sure the world sees your beautiful face.
You're too kind. You're
And your
too
beautiful
kind.
smile. Yeah, no, it's the truth, Dylan. It's the truth. So I'm happy everybody get to see you and get to know more about you. Obviously, we're going to talk some Australian Open because that is happening currently. Almost as we're recording this on Wednesday night, and because of the time difference, the women's singles semis games are going on in just a couple hours in the wee hours of the morning here Central Time in the United States. So we'll do our best to kind of talk through that. By the time this comes out, those will probably already have been played. Just a warning to our audience. But we still have the men's semis going on later, and then obviously both the finals happening this weekend. So we're getting down to the end of this tournament, the first tournament of the year. It's the start of the real start of the tennis season in the tour. So it's an exciting time. The last time we talked about tennis, like I mentioned when Hannia was on, talked about the U.S. Open. It was kind of the tail end of the calendar. It was before the ATP and everything. So it was the last major of the year, but now we're starting over again. First major of the year. It's sunny and warm down in Australia right now. Watching those matches, it makes me miss the sun, although it does look very hot, and it definitely
It's
is
so
having an
nice.
impact. Yeah. So, but we are both here in Chicago, and it's definitely the opposite of sunny and beautiful. So, I get jealous watching the Australian Open, but it does remind me in the winter months of the good times ahead. So, I'm excited to get into that. But before we do that, Dylan, I wanted to let you introduce yourself to the audience. Tell people who you are. Tell people your background. You are a collegiate tennis player. You're an NCAA athlete. Is that correct?
Back in the day. Now I'm retired, but no, a little bit about me for those who don't know. I am in Chicago with Dom, lovely person, and yeah, no, I'm here trying to get masters, same as this guy, and yeah, I
Ready
was
Masters.
exactly. I was a collegiate athlete back in the day, and I played for Marist College, Roll Foxes.
Roll
Uh,
Foxes, baby.
Roll boxes, exactly, through and through. Um, and yeah, no, I had a really great experience. I played for 5 years. I took the COVID year, and I'm still very much involved in tennis now, and I love it to pieces. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, it's clearly a big part of your life, and when you commit 5 years and stay through COVID and play in college like that, it's got to be important to you. But I mean, if you want to step back and just talk about how you were drawn to tennis first, I think I know the story because our good friend and I kind of put it out there and made a nice video of you kind of telling your story to tennis. You don't have to dive into that much detail, but I think it's just it's really fascinating. It's really awesome, and I'd love you to share if you just how you got into the game, how you fell in love with it, and why you wanted to stick to it and play through college.
Yeah, so I mean, I got into the game. I grew up playing multiple sports, right? Like a lot of kids, I grew up playing baseball, played soccer, played basketball, played tennis, and while playing a lot of these sports, I was diagnosed with an epileptic seizure disorder. And essentially, to make a longer story short, the seizures kept getting worse and worse. And after some desperation, my parents enrolled me in this clinical study where intense exercise combined with medication and things like that helps, can help at least lower the effects of epilepsy or possibly get rid of it and so on and so forth. And my parents were like, well, he's not going to be in the gym at 6 hours a day at 13 years old. Like that's probably not a sustainable path. So they started having me play more tennis. And I was already an active kid and I loved to exercise. So it didn't feel like work for me. And from there on, I just kind of fell in love with it. And I knew I wanted to play in college because honestly, one of my main motivations was like my parents had I got two younger sisters. My parents they work so hard for us and both financially, and they sacrifice their time and their effort. And so like my whole thing was if I could go to school and I could give something back to them monetarily, right? Like, they already work so hard for us and they sacrifice so much that if I could work on my tennis game and get to the point where I would have to pay much less for college than typical, I would do that for them because they deserve all that more. And that was honestly one of my big motivators to go play in college. And I had dreams of going to play pro, like every kid who's starting to play tennis. And I ultimately wasn't good enough, but I had a hell of a collegiate career and a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, I think first of all, it's a tremendous story, and it's really incredible that you know sports and just sticking to that sport and that exercise were able to help you out so much just in life. Forget about just playing a game that you like, but just to be able to help you feel better. I think that's incredible, and I think a testament to the game and just getting out there and playing. So that's incredible. I think it's a wonderful story, and very selfless of you to pursue this and to help your family out a little bit. I guess that's the perks of being good at a sport and be able to play at the college level. But tell me more about playing at the college level in tennis, because I think it's something that it's not a sport that gets a ton of coverage at the collegiate level in the United States, and um, it was a sport that I was able to cover a little bit when I was working for the student paper at UC Davis. It was always great to go out to the courts and see some matches going on. But I know it's unique because you play there's doubles and a singles component for every match at the college level. How was that experience? Did it take a lot of adjustment? Was it, obviously you stuck around for 5 years, so it feels like it was the right place for you. And any memories that stick out to you, and just your overall takeaway from that experience?
I mean, honestly, I think the biggest takeaway for a lot of tennis players for who want to play in college is tennis is such a selfish sport.
Yeah,
And you have to sacrifice so much. And especially in the juniors, it's all about you. Everything is about you. You win, you lose, everything is about you. So it's really hard, at least initially, for a lot of people to make that switch into a team mentality, which is what college tennis is. And not many sports, let alone in the collegiate level, have that. I can't think of one off the top of my head where you have an individual that can transition right into a team sport quite in the same way.
sure.
And I just think that component is like what I was missing from playing tennis. Like I loved playing for not only a university, but playing for the guy next to me, right? Playing for my guys, like playing for something bigger than myself, wanting to put my body, my mind, put everything on the line for them was like the greatest joy. And I hold my head high in saying that I gave everything I had. And if I have a sixth year, and if Northwestern comes calling and says, "Hey, Dylan, we need you to jump in a couple matches," you never know. I'll pick up the rackets again in a
Hey,
heartbeat. I loved it.
yeah, you still got some eligibility left. You could still move. That'd be incredible. I'd come to watch. I definitely want to check out a Northwestern match in these coming weeks. I know they have that nice indoor facility that we were at, that you're kind enough to play some tennis with us and show off your serve a little bit to me, because I wanted to see, I was like, I need to like I need to see. I don't want to feel. I want to feel what it's like to be standing on the other side of a collegiate tennis player. and just feel what that serve is like. It was pretty fast. It was pretty fast. So I don't know if I'd be able to get you a return there. So I appreciate you doing that. I guess the last thing on that, I know you're still, like you said, you mentioned you're still involved with the sport, and now you're kind of coaching a little more, and you've gotten into that. I know you've been doing it for a little bit of time. I know you did some work in that regard over the summer, but now you're doing a little bit here up in Evanston. So tell us about that. Tell us how is that something you enjoy? Is that something you can see yourself doing? Obviously, you're here in this program, doing something else, trying to get in the sports media environment. But how is coaching kind of involved in your day-to-day life?
So, I mean, coaching is my spending money in Chicago. That's how it's involved in my
That's
day-to-day
real.
life.
That's real.
It's an expensive city, right? And so I need every dollar I can get. So,
Amen.
no, I enjoy it a lot. It's particularly more fun when you're working with advanced players, right? When you don't have to build people up from the ground up, and you can
Yeah,
kind of
sure.
a semi-finished project. But I've been doing that, and I've also, like, for fun for me, I've been hitting with the Northwestern women's team. That's also been a blast.
That's great.
They're all incredible to be around. All the coaches are incredible to be around, and I can't wait to continue to be around that program.
Awesome. That's great. You got your foot in the door of the Northwestern tennis program. Your finger on the pulse. So it's great to have you, Dylan. Um, That's great. So I wanted to get that out of the way, just kind of your intro, and get the people familiar with you, and just to make sure they know that you are an experienced tennis player. You know the game, and hopefully, I know you, not hopefully, but I know you will give us some good insights here as we talk about tennis at the pro level, at the highest level. Um, I am interested to hear about maybe your foray into trying to go pro and how that went, because I just, it seems like it's just a very difficult thing to do, because again, like you said, it's all about you. It's all about, winning your matches, and really competing at the highest level. But let's talk about the Australian Open. It's been a really interesting, fun tournament so far. There's been a number of upsets. There's a couple big storylines. I think, we have the semis, the final four set in the men's and the women's singles. You got some big names still there. So it's got everything you kind of want in a major, from my perspective. But uh, maybe give me some of your biggest takeaways, biggest storylines that you're looking at this tournament so far.
Well, big storylines. I'll start with the women because they do play tonight. You have Yastremska in the semis from Ukraine. She's constantly shouting out the struggle that is continuing over there. And she comes from a really interesting story. She is our age, actually, Dom. I think she's 23. And
Yeah, I'm older. I'm a couple years older,
a
brother, but
couple years older.
she is
I'm not
not too
our
far
age. We're
off.
getting masters together. You know how it is.
Yes,
But
sir. Yes, sir.
but it comes from an interesting background because she had gotten, I think, somewhere in the low 20s in the world at one point. She had gotten up there, I think, in 2020, and everyone was saying like she was going to be the next thing, big thing. And then I think she got hit with a doping charge, if I'm
Oh,
not
really?
mistaken. I think she got hit with a doping charge, and she kind of had to work her way back, and she qualified for the Australian Open. She was a qualifier, and she's made
Yeah,
her
I
way,
see that. Yeah. Jeez.
first one to do it in 45 years, I read. So,
Wow.
it's definitely a really big storyline on the women's side. And she's beaten a couple really good seeds along the way. She beat Emma Navarro, the American. She also played college tennis, funny enough, at UVA.
Oh,
And
really? Wow.
yeah, and then she beat Victoria Azarenka, who had previously won the Australian Open, and is obviously a constant threat in that top 20 in the world ranking. So she's had some good wins, and she's fighting her way through to the semis. And then I guess the other big storyline that I would throw out there for the women, not that there aren't with all four of the competitors left,
Sure.
is Sabalenka's insane dominance thus far.
Yeah.
I She hasn't had a match go over an hour, 12 minutes. Like, that is absurd. And she's winning, and she's winning impressively, and she has yet to be tested so far.
Yeah. For the people who don't watch tennis or don't watch much tennis, an hour 12 doesn't, it may sound like a long time, but in tennis that's a lightning quick match, especially just at the pro level when everybody's so talented on both ends of the court. But that's those are pretty quick, so she's definitely dominating. That's a good it's a good stat there. Yeah. I saw um I think Vondrasova is who what's her name beat in the first round as well, and then she just Stremska just beat she beat Vondrasova in the first round
Yeah.
to get a tournament, and Vondrasova just won a title last year, I think, right? Am I
Won
correct?
Wimbledon. She won Wimbledon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. So I forgot about that too. Yeah, no, so she's been on a tear herself, clearly, but
yeah,
she was 20 in the world, so she kind of has that 20 and change in the world. So
sure,
she has that ability clearly. Like she's still at the game and she's still so young. So it's good to see her making her comeback. And then I
yep,
guess um for the men to touch on that, because you said to touch on both,
sure.
um to touch on both, you have Novak Djokovic is continuing to roll, and he is incredible at what he does. And some people may say he's the GOAT. I'm just throwing it out there. I don't think that's a bold take. And he draws a really in form Yannick Sinner, who had just I think he had won, his coaches had won Coach of the Year last year, Coaching Team of the Year for the
Wow,
ATP, and his ranking went up from, I think, like mid-teens, I want to say 15, and he ended the year at 4. So he made a really big jump in the rankings, and now he's the 4 seed and he's in the semis, and he's looked really, really good this tournament too. Um, I don't,
Italian. Gotta shout out my Italian.
yeah, exactly. And I don't think he's dropped a set to this point
Wow.
throughout the tournament in the semis. So I think he's playing. I don't think
Yeah,
he's dropped.
he beat Rublev in straight sets. Yeah, I'm looking at his past matches. Yeah, I don't think he has. That's very impressive.
Yeah. And then on the other side of the semis, you have 2 marathon men. You have 2 people who are getting it done rather fast, and then you have 2 people who are getting taking a long time to get it done, right?
Oh
So
man.
you have Zverev, who's played all sorts of 5-setters this tournament, and even if he's won relatively easy, he's still being pushed. But I mean, credit to him for coming back after that severe ankle injury at the French and starting to find that rhythm again. I know that wasn't easy for him.
Yep.
So he's done very, very well, clearly. And then on the other semi, you have Medvedev, who
Yep.
just loves hard courts and loves playing hard court tennis and is always entertaining to listen to on court or to watch, but mostly to listen to, some might say. And his ability just playing on hard courts at this level, he just that's his favorite surface. I mean, he won the US Open, he's made US Open finals, he's made Australian Open finals, he has yet to win one. So, he's clearly done well, and he's been pushed this tournament. I think in the second or third round, he came back from 2 sets down. Pretty sure. I forget whether that was the second or the third round.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he just came
He's
off a 5-setter against Hurkacz.
yeah. That was pretty incredible. I was locked into watching that one last night as I was into the early hours of the morning. I tried to get some sleep, but that one was just you could just tell it was going to 5, and it just was epic. And Medvedev won in a tiebreaker in the first set, went down, came back. It was and then one in 5, and they traded sets basically the whole way.
Shout out to your tennis knowledge, by the way, because you had texted me and you were like, "This is going 5," and I said, "We'll see." I still remember that, and you were right. It went 5. So shout out to you on
Uh,
that one. You got that right on the money.
I had an inkling, had an inkling. Sometimes I could just feel it, but I think I also said, what's the Yeah, I was like, he's cooked because he was getting his ass kicked in the second
Mhm.
set, and I just me, I'm an idiot. I forget that tennis is a really long it's a long game. You could drop a set and come back. It's just like when you watch football or you watch basketball, other sports that I guess I'm more accustomed to watching. It's like as soon as the other team goes on a big run or makes a big play in football, it's just like, dang, like I don't know how they're gonna get the momentum back at their side. But in tennis, it's like you have the time. Like you can obviously you switch off the serves, and that's a big indicator of who's going to win the point. Obviously, if you're serving, you have a little better of an advantage to win a point. So it's just the swings that go back and forth. You're going to get your opportunity, and it's especially in the men's game when you have it's best of 5. You have a lot of opportunities. So I should remind myself of that when
Yeah,
I'm
no,
watching
no,
tennis.
it's best of 5 at the majors. And there's a reason why they call it, for those who don't know, there's a reason why if you lose on your service game, it is called a break.
Yep.
And they it's an advantage to be serving, especially at the pro level.
Yeah, it's that one had some wild swings. Fritz got a. I mean, I guess let's just stick to the men's real quick, and then we'll jump over the women's. I know that's going to happen again soon. It'll probably be the final will be determined by the time that we get this podcast out of there. But Djokovic going for number 25. If he wins this one,
25.
he already set the Grand Slam record last year with I think number 23, right? Did that happen? Was that the U.S. Open or prior to that?
That was the US. And he has he's tied all time men and women with Margaret Court.
Yep.
She wasn't really in the open era, so some people count it, some people don't. So he's in a tie, but he can officially overtake everybody for first place, men and women, all time, if he pulls this one out.
Yeah. Geez, man. I mean, I think it's hard to argue against him if he can get this win, and we'll talk about kind of one of his rivals is out of it now. If he can get this win, I mean, I don't know how you argue against him being the greatest tennis player of all time, just with the number of Grand Slams that he has and just the dominance he's had over the sport. We did talk about it last time that talked tennis on this podcast, so I won't go too far into it, but. Yeah, on the other side, the shocking upset of the quarterfinals was Zverev. I know you mentioned it already. Took down Alcaraz in 4 sets, and the sets that he won, they weren't particularly close. He beat him 6-1, 6-3 in the first two, went to tiebreaker, and Alcaraz got the third set. But then
He was up in the third too.
yep,
He had a chance to close it. I think he
yep.
went like 5-1 or 5-2 in the third set. So, he had his chances even to knock it out in straights.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just I guess one of the surprises. I mean, Alcaraz is number 2 in the world right now, Djokovic number 1. So it felt like maybe they were on another collision course to meet in the final again. But maybe that's an advantage for Djokovic now. He doesn't have to play Alcaraz, who I guess the world kind of thinks it's going to be Alcaraz's turn. And we keep thinking it's going to be Alcaraz's turn to kind of turn it on and start winning some more majors for his name as Djokovic gets older. But it seems like Djokovic, the older he gets, the better he gets. It's pretty
He's like
incredible.
wine.
Yeah, he's
He's
like
like
fine
wine.
wine.
Like fine wine. No, but Alcaraz is still doing well. People
Yeah.
forget he's still so young. I don't know if he's 20 or 21. He's 20 years old. I just looked it
Jeez.
up. He's 20 years old and he already has 2 majors at 20 years old. So he's well on his way to a reasonable form of success. So he'll get there.
Yeah.
This
See, in the the other sports, if you're talking about other sports and I think in basketball, football, etc., we love to knock down our young stars. So they call him washed already. I think if he was in any other sport, if he won 2 majors and now he lost in the quarterfinals in this major, he'd be called washed. But I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that because
I
he's
hate to
young.
say
He's
it
incredibly
too.
talented.
I hate to say it too, because like in tennis, for those who don't know,
Sure.
if you don't win the tournament, you lose every single week.
Yeah.
Like that's like unfathomable to a lot of sports. Like, you see professional boxers who spend their careers undefeated. If you don't win the tournament, you lose. So
Yeah.
like while you may see Novak having these insane runs and go like 49-1, 49-0, like he's done in his career, that's not common.
Yeah.
Unless you're winning titles week after week after week, you will lose. So I think people who don't understand that about tennis, it may be like, oh, like he just sucks. He's losing all the time, But it's like, no, that's just the nature of the beast. That's just the nature of the game.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's especially I think on the men's side right now, it's that obviously you have a 1, a 4, a 3, and a 6 in the world in the final 4 here. So we there's still a lot of good talented tennis players out there. But it was surprising to see Alcaraz lose and lose in that fashion, not to pull a second set off of Zverev, and Alcaraz is usually the one who kind of I think gets up on his opponents typically. So that was surprising to see. But yeah, this strange situation with Zverev too. I know we were talking about it in his legal troubles in Germany with some allegations of domestic abuse. And I was reading an athletic article. Shout out to Matthew Futterman. He's been a really good follow on covering this Australian Open. He's putting in work, putting a lot of articles out there. But he wrote one just how strange it is that this hasn't been brought up in the tournament yet for him. You know, winning all these matches. Obviously, he's in the semis now, and he has these kind of allegations hanging over his head. He has a pending trial to determine whether he will be held financially, because I think the German government ordered him to pay a certain amount of money for the allegations that the mother of his daughter had accused him of. So just a really scary scene. I mean, just not great stuff. Obviously, I don't want to like speak out of turn and say that he did everything when it's still alleged, but just a strange situation for tennis right now. I know that you might have some thoughts on that, but I knew that was something that I just wanted to point out at least.
No, it's a very strange situation. And like, I don't know if you've read the article. If you get a chance, definitely read the article that the girlfriend at the time put out. I don't know
Hmm.
if you read that, but it's some harrowing stuff and
Yep.
some really, really rough accusations. And while I'm disappointed that tennis isn't doing anything about it, I'm not shocked. They kind of want to protect their big stars, and Zverev is sixth in the world. And if he was to go under, they may not like the financial implications of that.
Hmm.
So, especially with everything still pending and nothing is confirmed as to what he has or hasn't done. So I just think it's a interesting situation, and I think I can say I'm a little disappointed in both the governing body of the Australian Open, in Zverev, in the journalists who were in the press room and asking questions. I know one guy tried to ask at the
Yeah.
end of the press conference, and Zverev kind of shut him down real quick. But as budding journalists ourselves, if I was in that position with that elephant in the room, I don't
Yeah.
know if I could ignore it. Like I really, really don't.
Yeah, no, that's a very difficult situation to be in, especially when he's so tight-lipped about it and doesn't want to talk about it and kind of wants to shove it to the side. And obviously, he's denied all wrongdoing, but he'll get his day in court theoretically, and that's coming in May. And I know that part of the issue there is that that's when the French Open is happening as well. So there's just this whole issue of I don't think he has to be at the trial, but he might not even be there to begin with, and he'll be playing in the French Open maybe when this decision is handed down potentially. So a very uh, just a dicey situation for tennis to be in, and hopefully, they do make the right decision maybe once things are actually settled off the court. So just thought that was worth mentioning. But
Absolutely.
he is in the court. He is in the semifinals. And I think we talked through the rest of the men in the final four there. But any other performances that stuck out to you on the men's side, maybe before we go back to the women's? I know Fritz made it a long way, made it to the quarterfinals, and tried his best against Djokovic. But he I think he's 0-9 against Djokovic now.
Yeah, he's 0-9. I for me, that's a performance that stuck out. But for me, I think the performance of the tournament, just from both the humorous sense, but also in all seriousness, is Adrian Mannarino. I
Uh-huh.
mean, at 36 years old, the man swears by drinking tequila to help him play tennis. He did say that in a post-match interview.
I love that.
And he also, with his unique game style and him being injured and coming back and being in the top 20 now, a lot of people also don't know this, but for those who do not know tennis, the racket strings, each pro likes it differently in terms of how tightly they are pulled in the racket. And Mannarino strings it at 17 pounds, which you may be like, is that a lot? Is that a little? That is like otherworldly low. It was reported stringing at 17 pounds. That is otherworldly low. I don't know anyone who is remotely close to that. Like friends of mine who play with loose racket strings, and I say that with quotes, play in the 40s.
Oh my God.
So to drop it to 17 pounds, or at least at one point, I don't know if that's his consistent range. He fluctuates a little bit,
Wow.
but like he's right around there is funny. And not to mention, he had three five setters back to back to back.
Yeah, I
Uh,
just saw he he won in 5 sets against Shelton, who's kind of an up and
Yep.
coming American star as well, in the third round. So he really did play some incredible matches.
I have to shout him out. And then probably, I guess, the other one that sticks to mind is Cazot as a wild card, the French wild card, making a deep run. He put up a really good fight against Hurkacz, but didn't come away with the win. But he played some really impressive matches. He took out Griekspoor, a seed in the previous round, and I believe he took out some notable names in the other 2 rounds as well.
Yeah, Rune took out Holger Rune.
Took out Holger Rune. There you go. So much to my delight, but that's a topic for another day.
We won't talk about that one.
We won't talk about that one.
That's a good one. But I want to go back though. 7. So what is having a lower weight on your racket do in the game when you're hitting the ball?
Well, if you think of the racket like a slingshot,
Sure.
if the strings are looser, the ball can theoretically be pushed back further and then forward. So for many amateur players, you get more power when you drop the tension because
Sure.
you don't have to work as hard. And since the racket strings can move backward and forward, you can hit the ball harder. For the pros, you can also get probably a little more topspin because your strings move a lot. So it's a lot easier to brush up on the ball, accelerate, and get a lot more topspin. Some people find it easier to play with a lower tension. Some people don't. It's one of those things, again, tennis is one of those weird sports where the equipment is like highly individualized
Interesting.
to the point where it's like certain people like different weighted rackets. Certain people like different rackets with different weight distribution. Some people like it heavier in the butt of the racket. Some people like it heavier towards the head of the racket. Some people play with lower tension strings, higher tension strings, different levels of stiffness. These are all things that all these players think about. So it's really individualized, not just with the tension. I just had to throw that out there because
No,
I
that's
just find
crazy.
that funny.
Well, the more you know, because I knew none of this still, and I'm not even pretend like I knew that before. But I thought that there was some sort of standardization between the equipment that the players were playing with. But it seems, I mean, if you can play with that wide a range of tension in the racket, different sizes, weights. I know obviously people are different size and different strengths, but that's just it. It seems like I don't know. I don't know the game enough, but is there any tactical advantage just to have? I guess it is like you said, personalized. But is there a tactical advantage to have different weights like that or different equipment work in your favor like that?
Absolutely, because if you think about it, mid swing of a tennis racket, the heavier the racket, the more work it does for you, right?
Sure.
So almost following the laws of physics and inertia and going
As
down
we were good at
stuff.
that in this podcast. We love physics.
So I think I think it absolutely plays a really big part for some of these pros. I know if I'm thinking about it now, Federer would play with a racket when he was playing that was like really heavy.
Mm,
So like, if you or I were to pick up that racket, we would go, wow, this is heavy. For US folk, I think it was somewhere in the 12 to 13 ounce range. Like I think it was 12 and change ounces or maybe high 11s, which is very heavy for tennis racket. And I think from what I've read and from what I've researched, and again, I could be wrong, Nadal plays with a racket more similar to what you would see on the shelf. So it's all player preference. It's all what you like, what you don't.
that's a great insight. Again, I wouldn't have known that. So appreciate you divulging that information to us. Definitely something I'll try to research more. I just want now it's going through my mind is like how many different combinations of this equipment that each player plays with. So definitely something I want to dig into. But yeah, I think any last things for the men's side. I know our sweet Prince Tiafo had an early exit in this one. I do like watching Francis play, but he was out in the second round. So not a tremendous showing for the U.S. Men in this tournament. Obviously, Fritz went the farthest, and Shelton, had a decent run, but it's just getting tougher and tougher for the U.S. men to break into these late rounds in the tournament now.
Absolutely. It's getting tougher and tougher for these US men to break into the later rounds for sure. But I think one other thing that I'd want to touch on
Sure.
too, if I had to pick something else that stands out to me in the draw, would be, I'm trying to find I want to make sure. Rublev.
Yeah. Yeah.
Andre Rublev making, I believe, his 10th quarterfinal and still coming up short in the quarters. So like, he's making the quarters of all these majors, which is fantastic. But for some reason, he just hit a block. He just can't get
Is
past the
he
quarterfinal.
is he 0-10 in the quarterfinals?
I think he's 0-10. I don't think he's made a
Wow. Oh my gosh. Oh wow. He's like the it's like the Chris Paul of tennis right now.
Yeah.
Can't
So
can't win in the when it matters most. He gets so close and he can't win it.
so we'll see if that changes. But that's something that I had to touch on.
No, good. No, it's a great insight. So, yeah, I think that about does it for the men's side. Yeah, gonna be needless to say, gonna be a really fun semis and finals here. You got Djokovic against Sinner on the one side, Medvedev and Zverev on the other side. I think Zverev's a big guy, and Medvedev's pretty tall too. So that's going to be kind of a match of the physically imposing guys, and then you got the old champion Djokovic going against Sinner, who's hungry to get a title. So going to be a good one to watch there. On the ladies' side, on the women's side, talked about Yastrzemska having
Mm-hmm.
a kind of a dream run here to the semis. And you got Sabalenka you touched on, who I really enjoy watching that U.S. Open final. Right, that was Gauff and Sabalenka. That was a really incredible match. Loved watching that one, and they get to go head to head in the semis here in the Australian Open. So I'm looking forward to round 2 there.
That is going to be a barn burner, especially because while I've went on and on about Sabalenka, barring her last match, her most recent one, Goff has also looked incredible.
Yeah,
She's won
yeah,
in dominant fashion. And I think going into that last match, she hadn't been broken in like her last 14 service games. So she clearly is feeling confident and feeling the aura of I won my first slam, I belong here, which as she should.
yeah.
So I think her and Sabalenka is going to be another barn burner. And I'm very curious because, as I've mentioned earlier, Sabalenka has yet to be tested this tournament. And I'm curious to see what's going to happen if she gets tested. If
Could be.
she hasn't been leading up to that, so she may not be conditioned in the sense of, mentally, in the sense of like, oh, shoot, I'm not used to this. I'm down right now, which could happen against Goff. Or she could go out there and absolutely steamroll her like she's done
Yeah.
everybody else.
So
So
you
we
think
don't.
that first set is going to be key there to see how that plays out? Because if you're saying if Goff kind of jumps out and gives her at least a tough first set or maybe even wins it, then it'll be interesting to see what Sabalenka does to respond there.
Absolutely, absolutely. And their US Open final went 3 sets, and I think
Yep.
Sabalenka took the first one, if I'm
Yeah, I
not.
think so. I think
I
so.
think
Yeah.
Sabalenka took the first one, so she's clearly very good as a front runner. And the thing about Sabalenka that people don't know is that woman hits the ball so
Yes, she does.
freaking hard. It may not look like it on TV, but she hits I promise you to everyone at home, she hits the ball so hard. So it's an interesting style matchup with her and Goff too, because
Hmm.
Coco has really good movement, very good movement, good backhand, stays very mentally composed, likes to play the ball a little bit higher on the forehand side, and is much more of a counterpuncher or defensively minded, however you want to say it, tennis player, whereas Sabalenka wants to take your head off with every shot she hits. So it's a very interesting clash of styles too, which will also make it really, really fun.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I was going to ask you what makes, because we're on that side of the bracket right now, and
Hmm.
Coco has been obviously on a tear recently, obviously finishing the last season with a win at the U.S. Open, her first major, and now people have kind of the media and just I guess tennis fans have anointed her kind of the next up, especially in the American side of a champion in the tennis space, and she's obviously very young as well. But what makes her, in your mind? I know you mentioned the movement, but what is it about Coco that makes her so good and has given her this really incredible run just very early in her career so far?
Well, a lot of people also forget when Coco was either 15 or 16, she made the fourth round of Wimbledon and she made a splash and she
Yeah.
wasn't supposed to say that
Mhm.
with quotes, wasn't supposed to do anything. And she did. And what makes Coco good is her mentality. Even back then, from when she was 15, 16, she stays so composed. She's such a fighter. She doesn't quit. And in a sport like tennis, lots of these players at all levels, right? You know, college, high school, you quit mentally far often more than you quit physically. And if you've been around the game long enough, you know what that looks like when someone quits mentally. And you don't see that with Coco. She's very, very mentally locked in. And, you know, I consider tennis very much like a puzzle, right? Your
Yeah.
style against my style. How am I going to beat you? And if something isn't working for Coco Gauff, she's really good along the lines of her mentality of making adjustments. She's like, okay, my backhand isn't working. I'm going to try and play a little bit higher above the net and a little more in the middle of the court to be a little safer. Stuff like that. She thinks very, very well, and she adapts her game, excuse me, very, very well.
Wow. No, that's great insight. I know I was reading another athletic article about Coco and what makes her game so well. I know that was one of the things they mentioned, and it just it again. I think I talked about it. We talked about me and Hanaya talked about it on the last podcast. We talked tennis about that specific aspect of her game and just her being so young and being able to have that sort of just already this broad experience base of playing in high pressure situations and just knowing how to navigate that, navigating the fame and the accolades that she has, but also, you know, remaining focused, remaining locked in, and seems like that mentality definitely came in handy in the quarterfinals against Kostyuk, another unseeded Ukrainian in the quarterfinals, which you know, props to them for making that far. And you know, Kostyuk gave Coco everything she had because this really was kind of a gut check for Coco. She did not play her best tennis at all in this one. She got a lot of breaks, or she was broken a number of times. She had a bunch of unforced errors and double faults, and she just wasn't playing the typical Coco Gauff tennis, but she was able to pull it out. It seems like it took a lot of mental will to stay in that one and to win it in 3 sets.
Absolutely. I think it was a lot of mental strength. And, you know, Coco was down early in the first. She went down, I think 5-1 or 5-2 in the first, I
Mm-hmm.
want to say. Ended up squeaking out that set
Yeah,
out of,
tiebreaker. Yep.
in a tie break, and then went up big in the second set, and then ended up losing that set. So
Big swings.
it was really, really back and forth.
Yeah.
And then, you know, her mental strength, obviously, and she prevailed and she made good decisions in that third set. But it was really interesting to see a gut check because while Sabalenka hasn't been tested, that was Coco Gauff's first test of the tournament, real test, like super tight test. She was down a break when she played Dolhide, I think in the second round,
Mm.
serving. I think Dolhide was serving for the first set at 6-5 in the first. And I think from that point on, she was very, very smooth sailing. So it was really interesting to kind of see her, okay, you got hit with this adversity. What are you going to do? And she responded.
Yeah, that's the mentality of a champion. Coco there, pretty impressive. But she's in the semis again. She's kind of set up here again. Like I said, a rematch of the U.S. Open final against Sabalenka. On the other side, we talked about Yastrzemska, just the story that she's had, you know, from a qualifier all the way to the semis here, knocking off some big names. And then you got Zhang, who's really, I think, been, you know, somebody I don't know too much about, Dylan, but I've noticed that she has been kind of in the running in the last couple majors here. I think she's really been making big strides, and now she's got a semifinals appearance now.
I mean, she's making really, really big strides. She's going to be in the top 10 in the world when the new rankings come out after the tournament. And it's like you said, she's been a contender in the past couple majors. She's really elevated her game. And as you can see, I mean, it's paying off with the semifinal appearance. If you look at the tournament, she's also been through, I think she has either one or two three-setters this tournament where she's been tested. So she's had an interesting mix of some easier matches where she's kind of rolled a little more comfortably and some tighter 2-set or 3-set matches. So we'll see how that plays into, you know, her recovery and her fitness going into this semifinals because as we touched on, Yastrzemska, while being on this dream run that she has is also battle tested. So it'll be really interesting to see the two battle tested on that side, and then Coco, who's battle tested, and then Sabalenka, who's just rolling through everybody.
Yeah, no, it's pretty incredible again, like how quickly they have to recover and play the next match when you win in these tournaments. It always amazes me that they just play like a day or two after, and you just get, it feels like that's not enough rest for how much energy they exert in a lot of these in a lot of these matches that we watch.
It's crazy. And the other thing I forgot to mention about Coco and Sabalenka for other
Sure.
people who didn't, just one last thought on that is Coco's currently undefeated on the year. She won the
Yeah.
warm-up tournament coming into Australia. I think it's important to mention that because she won a title already this year. I think it was her 7th career title. If I'm not mistaken.
Wow.
And she's coming into the Australian Open with a lot of confidence in a sport where you lose every week. She hasn't
Yeah.
lost in 2024. So she's
It's
doing
notable.
really well. And I think Sabalenka also had a really good run. She made the finals, I think, of a different warm-up tournament. I think she'd lost in the finals, but again, clearly only one loss on the year. So both of them are flying high and clearly don't want to take away an O if you're Coco and add another one if you're Sabalenka.
Playing their best tennis at the right time. Yeah. So I'm looking. I know you mentioned Zeg. Yeah, a couple. She went to a third set tiebreak against Wang in the third round. She and then I think she just played a three setter against Kalinskaya in the quarterfinal. So she's definitely played a lot of tennis here. So yeah, another exciting final four here for the on the women's side. Any predictions and how you think this one's gonna go down before we get back to the men's, and I'll get your predictions on that too.
So
We're gonna hold you to it, Dylan. No pressure. We're gonna hold you to it.
no pressure. But if I'm making my picks, I'm gonna take Goff in that semi
Okay.
because I think she'll be locked in, and I think there's a certain element to being
USA.
tested. Not to mention she is the American there, but
USA, baby.
USA all the way. But in all seriousness, I do think that there's an element. While she hasn't been tested too much, I think she's been tested the right amount, and we'll see how it impacts her. I know, and Sabalenka also has not been on court very long. And the thing about these tournaments is a lot of these players, especially when you make deep runs, you develop a sense of rhythm out there, right? And you have your warm-up routines, your recovery routines, and stuff can be impacted by the late matches, right? You have a late match and then you get a bad sleep, and then you wake up the next day, you have a bad practice on your off day, and then you go out there and you have to play again the day after.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see how Coco will respond with having been tested this past batch in a tough way. But I do
Yeah.
think she's pull it out because I think as of now she has Sabalenka's number, and I think her confidence is at an all-time high, and I think that's what's going to play a big part in that match.
Well, you heard it here first. And what do you think? Who do you think is gonna be in the finals on the other side?
So
Who's gonna be playing golf?
who's going to be playing golf? So and if I get this wrong terribly when this comes out, I can laugh about it later.
Redact. We'll redact it.
I'll redact my picks then. No, but in all seriousness, while I want to pick Zhang because of her previous run of form, I want to go with the underdog. I want to see a qualifier make the finals of the Australian Open, right? We had a qualifier a couple years ago win the US Open in Emma Raducanu. That was a crazy story. Hadn't happened in US history, US Open history to that point, I believe. And so to have that happen in the Australian Open would be really cool. So for that reason
Okay.
and that reason only, I think she has the game to do it too. I think she's not too tall, but I think she kind of plays a little bit of a bigger game, and she also has some good variety that I've seen this tournament.
All right. You heard it here first. Your Shremska Golf in the finals. We'll wake up tomorrow and see if that comes true. So we'll see. Yeah, the Sabalenka Golf match, 2:30 a.m. U.S. Central Time. So we'll see in the morning, and then Zhang and Yastrzemska 4 a.m. So these will definitely not come back to haunt you, Dylan. I assure you. But we'll go back to the men's side. I want to get your predictions there as well. This one obviously will have a little more time, so this will come out before the semifinal matches play. But what are you thinking on this side?
So who I want and who I think on the first semi definitely differ. I'm not
Okay.
gonna lie to you, Dom. I would love to see Sinner pull this out. And everyone's like, Sinner beat Djokovic a couple times at the end of last year. He's got confidence. My thing is he hasn't played Djokovic. He hasn't beaten Djokovic in a best of five.
Hmm.
And the best of five versus every other tournament, for those who don't know, which is best of three. All the four Grand Slams that during the year are best of five for the men. Everything else is best of three. It's a different ballgame when you're playing best of five. It's really, really hard. So for this reason, I feel like I'm going to go with the safe pick as much as it pains me to it pains me, but my dad has a saying, and I've told you this. His saying is ABD, anybody but Djokovic.
Hater.
Unfortunately, I'm gonna have to pick Novak, but believe you me, I will be jumping for joy if Sinner can pull that out. And
All-time hater. I love that.
yeah, and I respect him. Don't get
Yeah.
me wrong.
Yeah.
Lots of respect. And then on the other side, I'm gonna have to go with Medvedev because I think he has Zverev's number. I think he's up on their head-to-head, if I'm not mistaken.
Sure.
Not only is he up on their head-to-head, I just think his style, he loves the hard courts. I think he has more tools to win this. I think Zverev in the bigger moments has kind of sometimes shown the tendency to get a little bit tight, not be as free-flowing, has the yips. I think Zverev is the more talented player of the two, and I think if Zverev plays to his capabilities, I think his level of capabilities are higher than Medvedev's. And I say that only because Medvedev is a very defensive style for those who don't know. His whole game is I'm gonna play every ball super solid, super deep, and I'm gonna work you around the court until you suffer. He doesn't really come to net. He doesn't really use his serve as much to the effect that it can, being a big guy. But I would say though, for while Medvedev has less tools, I think, to win it than Zverev, I'm going to have to go with him just because Zverev's tendency in the big stages to, I don't want to say this the C word. I don't want to say the C word, but his tendencies in the big stage
You
to
could say
not play as
it.
well as he can.
You could say it, Dylan. You could say it. Just
Choke, the choke,
choke it.
the choke a little bit, but no, but
All
to
right.
not play as well as he can, and I think loving the hard courts as he does, I think it's going to be a Medvedev Djokovic final.
Okay. And that's going to be another exciting one. Didn't they play in the US Open final last time?
They played
Which one
many
was
times.
it?
Medvedev beat him to win his one Grand Slam in the US.
That's
That's
what it was. Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. It wasn't last year. It was a couple years ago.
I believe.
But yeah, let me look that up. I need to make sure we get it right because we're all about being correct here at the cheap seats. But I do remember them squaring off in some
It.
finals recently. Yeah, so needless to say, that would be a really exciting one to watch if they do end up playing each other again in another major final.
Absolutely. It's also a really interesting style matchup too, if Djokovic and Medvedev end up making it, because for those who don't know, our good friend in the program and fellow tennis fan, Noah, we were doing pro athlete comparisons to tennis players cross sport. And for Novak, we compared him to Tom Brady because when you watch Tom Brady play, there's nothing art that jumps out at the average person to be like, wow, this guy's exceptional. But he does everything so well. And when you're halfway through a game, you can really appreciate that level of greatness. And I think it's very much along that way for Novak, not to mention them both being health nuts and insanely tough competitors too.
And playing
But
long into their growing older age against younger opponents.
exactly. So I will. That is not my take. That is Noah's take. I'm not going to
Hey,
take credit for that, but I do
shout
think
out, shout out Noah Poser. Got to shout him out.
that I do think it was interesting. It was an interesting comparison, and I think it's very true. I think Novak just plays that style where he's so solid everywhere, where he doesn't have much of a weakness. And it's interesting because Medvedev is also really, really solid. So the points are going to go very, very long, like they usually do when those two play each other.
Sure. Makes some good tennis, I guess. Yeah, it's just exciting on the edge of your seat. Yeah, I'm excited to watch these ones. I know that you got a NFL championship weekend on Sunday, and I'll be watching my Niners, but I'll be keeping an eye on the tennis as well. So I appreciate your predictions here, Dylan. It was great to hear them, and I know they'll all be totally true because you know everything about tennis. So uh, should
Not
we?
everything, not everything.
Should we? I want to get a couple more questions into you before we wrap this up. But talk to me about tennis in general going into this year, 2024. How do you see the game going overall this year? Are we poised for any breakout stars that we need to watch? Is it just more Coco Djokovic dominance? What do you think is going to happen this year? And that you should want to share with our audience here.
Are we thinking more like a hot take, or are we thinking more like something that
No,
we think would genuinely
no,
happen?
educated takes. Yeah, give me something that you think. Again, I think the breakout stars might be one that you can help with. I know you pay attention to who the up and coming players are around the world. So, yeah, no, nothing. It doesn't have to be bold. It can be bold if you want to, but I would love to get your educated take here.
So for me, I would say, wow, this is hard. I think I would say on the men's side, I think to continue to pay attention to the young Americans. And I know I'm saying that after a disappointing Australian Open for them, but Shelton worked his way up to insane heights for him. Only about, I think by the time the rankings and when he had gotten to where he had gotten to last year and a year exactly prior, he was still playing at Florida. So he played college tennis at Florida. His dad was his coach. His dad retired from there and is now his current traveling coach on the tour. Interesting tidbit. So I would say to watch the young Americans just because they've all been on such a rise. Tommy Paul has worked his way up slowly but steadily. He's playing very good tennis too. And Francis can make deep runs at a major. He's shown us. He made the US Open semis. I don't remember if it was last year or 2 years ago, and he played Alcaraz, and Alcaraz beat him in 5 in a very, very tough and physical match. So, I think for the men's side, especially keeping up with these young Americans, I know the current cliche is American tennis hasn't had the most success as of late, but not to jinx anything, but I think we got some chances there and we got some hopes, that's for sure. And
All right.
then, yeah, I think for that on the women's side, I think to pay attention to, it'll be really, really interesting to see. An American take too. I want to talk about Jessica Pegula a little
Okay.
bit. I
Okay.
think, while she didn't have the best Australian Open, much like Rublev, she kind of has the I make it to the quarterfinals, but I can't quite advance yet sort of thing. But I just think she's too talented. Her net game's too good. I'd love to see her make a deep run at a major, deeper than the quarterfinals. That's already very deep enough. So
Okay. All right, you heard it here first. It's all Americans. That's what we need to keep keep our eyes out for. Uh, yeah. So a lot of good stars there. So hopefully, I know it's been a big drought lately for American stars, especially on the men's side, the men's singles side. And I know kind of the game is kind of trending more Eastern European now. Definitely the Russians and a lot of Eastern European players have been really dominating as of late. So it's been an interesting trend over the last decade or so in tennis. I feel like that you've gotten just more of really dominant players coming from overseas now and really doing really well at these tournaments.
yeah, and that's even translated, funny enough, that has translated all the way down the ranks as college tennis. An NCAA study came out where college tennis is over for men and women is over 2/3 international,
Wow.
which is crazy if you think about. So the fact that even less Americans are playing in college than the international shows you how much the game is just continuing to grow overseas, and we got to catch up. So we'll see.
Oh, we gotta load back up. We gotta get the academies running again. We need more American tennis players. I think I'm past my prime. It's too late for me to go back now,
Me too.
Dylan. We could have used you, Dylan, and we could have used you. Uh,
No, 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 no.
maybe,
Going
hey,
for it with a pipe dream.
yeah, it's over for me. But yeah, maybe some youngsters listening to this Cheap Seats podcast, they hear this and they're like, okay, I'll do it. I'll do it for America. Um, last thing for you, Dylan. Where do you stand on kind of the state of the game right now, at the pro level? Anything that you want to change? Anything that you think should be different? Maybe in the schedule, maybe in just how things are playing out right now, or do you feel pretty good about how the trends in tennis are going? What do you think?
I think the biggest thing for me in tennis that has to change is I think players, especially the lower ranked players, I think the top players make more than enough money. I think the lower ranked players, we need to find some way to get them a bigger slice of the pie, so to speak, from a revenue distribution standpoint.
Sure.
And it's really hard to do that in tennis because to think the best comparison I can give you in terms of the multiple governing bodies and stuff that govern it is think like combat sports for those
Sure.
who don't know, or especially boxing, where you have multiple promotions and multiple organizations who have their own belts and this and that. And while tennis doesn't have its own belts, unfortunately,
It would be pretty cool. It would be pretty
that
cool
would
if it
be
had their own
really cool
belts.
to get a championship belt. I'm just saying, every Grand Slam tournament is its own governing body. Additionally, all the tournaments throughout the year for the pros that are in that whose ranking allows them to make it are governed by the ATP. And then all the tournaments beneath that are governed by the ATP Challenger Tour, which is different, and then the ITF Tour. So I think having some sort of unity, and I know they have a players union, but it's not very strong, clearly, if some people are getting bigger pieces of the pie and than others. And while Federer is out here signing $300 million deals with Uniqlo and making a lot of money, you know, most people don't know this, that if you're not the threshold, a lot of people say is top 100. If you're not in the top 100, you're pretty much breaking even. And if you're lower than that, I'd say probably in the 175 range, you're kind of losing money, because in all these other sports where a lot of people have these expenses and these expenses are taken care of by outside sources and such, they are not taken care of by anybody else other than the player. So a lot of these people will travel without coaches or physios and
Wow.
stuff of that nature. And I want to commend the ATP. They just introduced a baseline program. It's their new testing protocol where they're giving injured players and stuff, people, if you hit ranking thresholds, a certain amount of money. And while that's good, it's a start. I think we need to do better in terms of getting a bigger slice of the pie. I did the math on this past US Open, and players only took home from everybody, singles, doubles, wheelchair, mixed. Players only took home a little over 18% of the revenue.
Wow.
Everything else went elsewhere. So to
18%.
18%. Then you think about these leagues, like many of your listeners who follow the NFL or the NBA, those collective bargaining agreements where you're taking anywhere from 49 to 51% of the revenue for the players, it makes a big difference. And if that money can get split up and distributed to these players, we might be able to encourage further growth, because the financial barriers are so great for these players who are just trying to scrap and climb their way up. You need a lot of financial backing to be able to do it, and not everyone can get that.
Jeez. Where's all that money going? Where's the rest of that 82%?
God, if only I knew. If only I knew to a T.
Man, I guess that's the million-dollar question, or the multiple million-dollar question. But yeah, let's pay the players. Let's just pay the no, they don't need to be millionaires, but they need to make sure that they can get compensated for going out and trying to chase their dreams and going on the tour and providing people entertainment. So I'm with you there, Dylan. I think that's a great I think opinion to have about what could improve the game right now. And that's something I didn't even really know, especially that split, just based on how much the total purse that they're taking home at these tournaments. So it seems like for different reasons, maybe the PGA Tour and golf kind of did a big transition about
Mhm.
paying players more, compensating players, mostly to keep them, away from live and Saudi Arabian backed league that they have there. But yeah, let's pay the players more. I think it's definitely trending that way in other sports. So why not tennis? So that's a good one, Dylan. I appreciate it. Spoken from experience, have you? I think we'll transition to the last question I have for you, Dylan. Any favorite sports memories that you want to share for the audience? But I guess going off that for me, any experiences going to pro tournaments, competing, trying to get on that circuit that you'd like to share with us as well? I'm curious.
Oh my God. I never played any of the pro tournaments that you
Sure,
would see, like the 25Ks and the 15Ks, which are among the lower level
sure.
pro tournaments to play. But there's a separate governing organization called UTR, and every tennis player in the world has a universal tennis rating, or UTR. And what UTR does is they have a lot of these, they call it a PTT circuit. Um, Not quite sure what that stands for off the
A
top of my
lot of acronyms, a lot of
head.
acronyms thrown around.
But basically it's these tournaments which help funnel a lot of really good players will play it, because they'll take a large chunk of prize money and they'll split it amongst everybody, and you get a guaranteed amount of matches. So like, I think one of my friends played one, and even if you lost, you get 4 matches, because they do it compass draw style. And if you lost all 4 matches, you still walked away with $500.
Hey,
So like, I've played a couple of those, and I
nice.
guess UTR related tournaments. I guess one of the funniest, God, there's so many experiences that I've had. I've had I remember I played a match with a guy, and it was really contentious at this men's tournament, and you know it got contentious to the point after handshakes and everything. And I still remember that I went out in the parking lot, and my dad was there watching the match, and we were going to leave, and the guy starts walking out to us and starts yelling, and
No.
stuff I can't say on the cheap seats, as I want to make sure it stays. Want to make sure it doesn't get taken down on
It's
YouTube. But
appropriate.
a lot of obscenities, and
Wow.
I remember my dad got me in the car. We shut the windows, and we hit the gas, and we took off like that. So
Smart not to get involved with that. It's just tennis. Everybody needs
just
to chill out. But I do love the passion though. I do love the passion for the sport. Like you said, it's a lonely sport. It's individual when you're playing kind of like that, and it's I can get heated. I can definitely see that. So,
yeah.
good on you for not getting involved in that, and maybe you wouldn't even be here. All right. Any other happy memories, things that you stand out from your career, just generally playing, or any really high highs that you want to share as well? Because I think that'll be a good note to end on.
I mean, probably one of the best memories that I can think of offhand was, in order to make our conference tournament during COVID, we didn't get much of a season leading up to it. Obviously, a lot of schools had their own different restrictions. In the following year, immediate year after the pandemic, and we we were playing this team called Quinnipiac. They're the reigning NCAA hockey champions.
Yeah, I was about to say they're a hockey powerhouse over
Yeah,
there.
hockey powerhouse, and they were in our conference. We ended up taking a very tight last match on 4-3 victory, where my teammate clinched it, and I remember
Woo!
us piling him as it sent us to the tournament, and
Oh,
that was
that's awesome.
a very fun memory for me, for sure.
That's special. That's special. The team, man. That's a like you said, the unique part of collegiate tennis is you're playing with a team. The points all matter. Everybody's match matters. So that's pretty incredible. So, shout out to the Foxes. Roll Foxes, baby.
Roll Foxes, shout out to the Fox.
Dylan, this was delightful to have you on. I know this has been going on a little bit, and I appreciate you giving your time to this show. I love talking tennis. Maybe even if my audience doesn't like talking about tennis, I'm going to make sure they can hear about some tennis because it's a great sport, deserves some respect, and the Australian Open's awesome. So thanks very much for coming on.
I appreciate you having me. It's awesome to have the opportunity to come on here and talk about the sport I love. So
Yeah, appreciate it, man. It's been great getting to know you the last couple months, and maybe we'll do it again when some later tournaments come down the road.
yeah, maybe we'll do it again.
All right, thanks, Dylan.
All right, I'll see you.